people will work they will die for you. They will run through fire for you if you believe if you have a common belief, right? And if you're showing up because you believe in the same things and they understand that and you're morally kind of moving in the same direction, they'll show up for that. It's always interesting to me when I work with people, they're like, well, they're not doing what I'm wanting them to do. And I'm like, do they even know why they're here?
Today's guest is Steph Meyer. She is the COO of Children's Mercy Kansas City, where she's responsible for over 3,000 nurses. And she's been in healthcare for nearly 28 years. And I've got to say, this is one of my most energizing, impactful conversations that I've had get on this podcast. I highly recommend listening because there are a lot of episodes we've done on tactical operations, strategy, systems. And this episode is very, very focused on leadership, heart, communication, and people. We go into so many different types of topics around communicating succinctly and consistently with large teams, why emotion is so critical in leadership, and the core beliefs that Steph brings into the culture at Children's Mercy. We talk about common mistakes that leaders make when they're dealing with people who are struggling outside of work and in work, and really how to approach those moments with heart and empathy and compassion, and being able to instill that same level and heart and intention into middle management so that it trickles down all the way from the top. So if you are ready to elevate how you lead with heart and compassion for people and really empowering your team to step into even greater possibility for themselves, I highly recommend this podcast as we welcome in Steph. We are live with Steph. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, this has been awesome. We already hit it off before starting the recording because we are Missouri girls and you are a city and I am from Missouri as well. So, and just your energy and enthusiasm, I know this is going to be such an amazing episode and I can't wait to dive in with you.
Well, I'm so glad that, we had that immediate connection, and I'd say the same about you. It's gonna be great.
Uh-huh, here we go. Well, let's go ahead and start off with give us a little bit of an introduction. What do you do and who do you serve?
Sure. So, I am the chief operating officer and chief nurse executive at a level 1 trauma center hospital in the Midwest in Kansas City, Missouri, called Children's Mercy, and I am responsible for about 6,000 people and, do all everything from people management to strategy to org development, and love it. It's a great job.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like a lot of things to manage. I know you were telling me before this that you're pretty much at work all day
Yeah.
right now. And I was telling you, I have a really close friend who just became an anesthesiologist. And just even hearing through all of her stories and experiences, and she worked at a trauma center for a while, it sounds like it can be really chaotic. And there's a lot of personalities at play. There's just a lot of different dynamics, so I would love maybe this is a fun place for us to start. I know one of the key topics we wanna talk about is people leadership today. Could you give us kind of what is a rundown of the overview in terms of people dynamics in a hospital? Like, as me as someone that goes to a hospital, I just understand it from, going to get my needs met. What is it like actually being in leadership and being in a team environment in a hospital?
Sure. That's such a great question because I really think that when you go, like you said, the people we're serving come and they're focused on the actual healthcare piece of what they need, whether it's a clinic visit, an ED visit, surgery, that type of thing. But my job is to really look at the overall enterprise. And that's from the very first person you see from the security guard that checks you in to the very last person you see, which might be the person that takes your kiddo out in the wheelchair. And then you have everything in between. So, like your friend, the anesthesia doc, and the primary doc and the nurses and our respiratory therapist. And my point with bringing that up is it's such a wide range of skill set and wide range of experience that the leadership piece can be a little bit tricky, right? It's the way you lead somebody who is running security for a 8,500 employed hospital is different than the anesthesia doc that you talked about, and their goals are different. So trying to bring everybody around a common goal around safety, patient outcomes, and experience overall for everybody that enters our institution is something that I try to do every day. And so it is an interesting, dynamic, the complexity that comes into healthcare specifically, and really a lot of industries, but specifically healthcare around everything that has to interact for somebody to heal, have a good experience, or if we can't heal you, how do we get you to a point of, comfort so that you continue to live your life in a way and your family lives their life in a way that, continues to grow and isn't detrimental.
Mm. What is the kind of trickle down effect, or how do you make sure that, like, what's coming from the top is going all the way down? Because the the role that you're in is so unique, which is why I'm so excited about having this conversation. The companies that I've gone into myself and the people that I've interviewed, there's companies really small that I've experienced where you come in and, man, it is so clear that the owner of a 20-person team, how the owner shows up, the whole team shows up, and the bigger that you grow, and I've experienced this myself, is the bigger that we've grown, the more important it is for leadership to just really be holding the standards and the core values and to be living in integrity. Because with every new role, it just becomes harder to maintain that same level of potency and truth of what's really the intention behind leadership. So could you tell me, with running or being responsible for 3,000 nurses, how do you ensure that what's coming from the top is healthy, is good, and that it truly trickles down all the way to the new person coming in?
Yeah. So I love that question. It's first of all, I work very hard to never forget what it's like to be them, right? So I was a nurse practitioner in my background, but if I needed to clean the floor, empty the trash, clean a stretcher, whatever that is, I've done that to make sure that our patients and our families are well cared for. So I work hard to make sure I understand and don't forget what it's like to be them and their story throughout the day. And that seems simple. It takes a lot of scheduling and maneuvering for me to be visible. I think that's extremely important. And I know we all talk about it, but it is underrated how the effect of being visible roles like this have. And that means going out with no intention of seeing something specific, right? And making sure that we talk to people and we know enough about them and their personal lives to have conversations. You've read all the literature, everybody listening today's read it, but it really takes some intentional planning to make that happen. The bigger your company grows and the higher you go up in the company, for lack of a better word. You and I talked earlier before we started. You always assume somebody else is managing that. They're not. It's your job to make sure you're managing it, and to your point, that's gotta start from the top down. So, it's being visible, it's making sure my message is clear and that what I say in one venue is not different than what I say in another venue. So, for instance, I opened orientation this past week for the entire hospital. We had several hundred people there, and I talk in orientation, whether it's that, whether it's a nursing town hall, whether I'm going to talk with our physician groups or our other clinical leaders or our executive vice presidents about 3 things that I want everybody to do. I center all my messages around those 3 things every single time I'm talking about what our options are here and what we're trying to do. I need them to lead with love. I need them to be better tomorrow than they are today, and I need them, if they can help, they should. Those are 3 tangible things that people can do, and all of our core values and our strategy can fit into that easily. So whether you are the food service person that's providing nourishment for our kiddos on the floor, or you're me, or you're somewhere in between, it's pretty easy to see, how do I play into those 3 things?
Mhm.
I think that makes messaging from, the top down easier, even if it's around some type of initiative we're doing or some type of culture work we're doing, or that we are supporting some local cause next week and we need everybody on board to show up here. Constantly rooting in that same message and drawing everybody to that commonality is helpful.
Mm. Do you have a process for articulating and putting together those kind of core messages? Because I imagine when you're so busy and there's so many things going on and you're going, like, you were talking earlier about all the media that you've done at one point, and you're going from this to that to this to that, and there's so many people listening to the message, so many different types of questions that you're answering. How do you craft the communication? Do you sit down at the beginning of your day and think about what are the important messages I'm communicating today? Is there monthly planning for that? And how do you, yeah, what is your process for coming up with what you want to communicate?
Totally, that's a great question. So, I do sit down monthly and look at what I've got through the entire month, but I have a comms plan that goes a year long. And so I'm looking at right, and it adjusts, right, because things happen that we weren't planning or I need to put in another message, but I look at what I'm going to do for the entire year, and then I nail it down by month and relook at it by month, making sure that my message is consistent, the 3 points that we talked about, and really that the feel of my message is consistent. That's important to me. When I first started working with the comms team years ago, as I got into leadership in a hospital, they would send me things like, "Hey, think about this. We'd like for you to look at being a part of this and saying something like this." And I'm gonna be honest with you. I finally said, I'm not saying that. First of all, that's not me. And when I go out there, my first goal is to be intentional, authentic, and I want people to believe in what I'm saying because I believe in it. And that's the only way to get people around a common cause no matter what your industry is, right? They need to believe in you and believe in what you believe to be able to have these groups come together. So it's taken me some real work to work with a comms team around what is the feel of my message and how am I going to manage that across an entire year span or several months. But we look at what my social media presence is, what I'm looking at in regards to internal presence, whether that's town halls, email communication, anything that I might post or send out on an internal website, making sure that all of that has that consistent message. That's how I feel like you can really change and manage a team better is making sure that that's thread through everything that you're saying and doing. Ironically, I got a text the other day and it was from one of my leaders and she's like, "Stephanie, I was just in this seminar with one of our new hires and she pulled out those 3 things I mentioned earlier and she's like, 'It's working.'" And I was like, "Right, tangible, easy to understand, makes everybody come around a common cause and you believe in it."
Mm. I would love to dig a little bit more
Yeah.
on the importance of the feeling because there are a wide range of COOs. There's a COO like myself who I'm way more extroverted, people oriented. Like my specialty is hiring people. Like I'm not the girl that's going to be putting in automations and looking at numbers and spreadsheets, but I'm amazing at hiring talent and putting them in the right seat and giving them the support that they need. But then there's the COO who's kind of the opposite, where they're really good at the automations and the tech and the strategy of what's happening with the processes. And yet they're responsible for leading people. And this is one of the things that I've talked to some COOs about, where the breakdown in their culture and getting their team to do the things they want. Like, why aren't they doing the things that I want them to do? Well, what is the missing piece there and how you're showing up and inspiring them? So I'd love to hear, why is it so important to come from a place of feeling and authenticity and emotion when you're leading people?
My biggest goal with that is people will work they will die for you. They will run through fire for you if you believe if you have a common belief, right? And if you're showing up because you believe in the same things and they understand that and you're morally kind of moving in the same direction, they'll show up for that. It's always interesting to me when I work with people who are like, "Well, they're not doing what I'm wanting them to do." And I'm like, "Do they even know why they're here?" So talk about and that seems simple, right? Let's talk about why are you here? What brings you to work every day? And do we have a commonality around why we're all showing up? Because there's going to be days everybody gets up and doesn't want to show up. So what's going to be the difference? Because especially in some industries, mine specifically, if they don't show up, that affects a kiddo's care, right? So it's not like that desk job can somebody else can do it tomorrow. That kiddo's still coming. That kid still needs surgery. That kid still needs an ED visit or an ambulatory visit. And so how do I make sure that that message, and that belief that we all have so for me, for instance, I'm part of something bigger than myself every day. Doesn't matter what my job is here, when I walk out at the end of the day, I've been part of something bigger than myself. And that is extremely important to me to talk about that and weave that through those 3 points I said earlier. And so to your point, whether you're a COO that's running, hiring the people and doing the professional growth and development and looking at strategy around workforce, or you're the one that's doing IT, AI, all of those things that you need as the other CEO to function, the reality is you're all still managing people that wanna believe in the same thing. And so I think we lose that sometimes and we go in and think, "Oh, I'm gonna say this and people should do it because they know why we're here." That has to constantly be recentered. And as your company grows and strategy might change, how you look at that and alter that or you don't, is important that it's talked about. Otherwise, people are just coming to work for a job and not for you and the cause.
So true.
Yeah,
The belief around and not even the belief, but just, like, the understanding even from a leadership perspective of why your people are at work. It's one of the things that I found to be the most helpful for really customizing my leadership for each person and giving them, 'cause what one person needs from me is very different than another, and if someone's there because they need a stable paycheck to pay for their kids to go to school versus someone's there as it's a stepping stone and they wanna grow and learn as much as possible,
right.
that person's gonna want more growth opportunity, and they want you to give them new things, and they're willing to fail and risk things a little bit more versus someone that's like, "I just need to make sure that I do a really good job in this role, and I need some stability." And being able to understand what the people on your team really need is so important to being able to customize the leadership for them. What is a belief that you have found that when you've instilled it in your leadership that the leadership under you who's leading the rest of the teams, what is one belief that you have found that you've given other leaders that you see has been, like, the most impactful in their leadership?
Yeah, everybody has a story. And it sounds so simple, right? And everybody's like, "What do you mean?" Everybody has a story, and you just touched on it. People come to work for a variety of reasons, right? And the risk tolerance is different for what they're doing based on why they're here. So the paycheck person's risk tolerance is a lot lower than the one who's actually here to grow and develop and do something else. So as you look at situational leadership, how are we growing people to adjust their style so that both employees' needs are met? What I tell everybody is remember, though, they each have a story. And the story that they have at home affects what they do here. The story of what they've experienced before affects how they show up at work. And they're continuing to build a story every day they come.
Mm.
And so I think it's an interesting concept and seems so simple, but we forget, right? Well, everybody comes to work. You need to come to do your job. This is why we're all here. Right. What happened this morning at home that all of a sudden they may be showing up differently today? Because nobody comes to work to host somebody else. Despite what we all think, if you've hired the right people, 99.9% of people come to work to do a good job. Nobody wants to be on a B team, right? I'm like, how many of you want to be on a mediocre team? Everybody's like, not me. Right. So we're trying to hire the A team, right? All of us trying to hire the best there are in the industry. Let's find the right conglomerate of people to make this happen. And so they all come to work to do a good job. And within their story, if it's that morning, if it's last week, if it's 2 years ago, affects the way they show up to work. So, do you need to know every detail? No, but you need to remember you hired them. They 99.9 show up to do a good job. And the way that something is interacting, not happening, not being understood has to do with most likely their individual story. The other thing I will tell you that, I find fascinating about this in all of us as human behavior, right? We work to, make all this happen every day, no matter what industry we're in. But we have a lot of things as we're moving from point A to point B that we don't understand. And our human behavior, we fill it in, right? It is human nature to fill in the details you don't know to make sense from A to B. Well, the reality is we tend to fill in with negativity. It's just a human element, right? Until you make a constant effort to assume positive intent and to assume people come to work to do a good job, when something goes wrong, your body and your mind is automatically telling you why they did what they did, and it's not positive. And so I tell everybody within that story, remember you control some of the narrative because you're filling in details from A to B that shed light on what that person is or isn't, and your interaction with them is jaded by that. So think about if what you're telling yourself, is it really what you see, saw, heard? Is it tangible or is it the part you made up? because the parts you make up is how we react. You're not really reacting to what you saw most of the time or heard in a text or heard somebody say. You're reacting to that plus the piece that you filled in that you weren't sure of to establish why it happened.
Totally.
Yeah.
Love this. There's a maybe I don't remember where I learned this, but some event or some personal development thing I did do someone I remember this was a Essential Leadership Academy that I did, and the coach said, "Everything that happens is neutral."
So true.
Everything that happens is neutral. Someone getting hit by a car, someone graduating, someone having a birthday party, it's all neutral. And you're like, you look around and people, your immediate reaction, especially if you've experienced some really traumatic things, like, you're like, how could it possibly be true? Well, if you remove the emotion from it and the humans, like us as humans, like we have to have meaning attached to everything. And so if you remove our human nature and you just look at nature, if a tree drops a leaf, like the human, if a human like loses an arm, we would freak out. But if a tree loses a limb,
Yeah.
just say, oh, that's nature, this is just how things happen. It's neutral. But to us, we're creating this meaning to it. And so one of the things that just to kind of piggyback off of what you're saying is assumptions. And
Yeah. Yeah.
assumptions can be so they can develop so many underlying toxic qualities and a team.
Well, they're powerful in all the right ways or wrong ways.
Exactly. And so, this is one of the biggest things I learned when I first stepped into leadership was someone on my team, I cannot remember what they did, but they did something that pissed me off.
Yeah.
And I went into Slack and I was like, this is out of alignment with our system, blah, 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 whatever my response was. And then their response was, well, this is what XYZ told me to do. And I went to that person, like, I did tell them to do that. And so I assumed that this person intentionally did this thing that I told them not to do, where actually what happened was I made myself look like a fool because I didn't ask questions to really understand. And like you said, fill in the gaps, understand what is the true story here versus me making it up and then leading from a place that it does not even have all of the accurate data.
Well, and then you as the leader, like you said, look like the ass, right? Because the reality is you don't have the whole story. So I really try to teach myself included, go in and I, this is like candid text from HR, but it really is designed to work. But like, help me understand that, right? Like, because you really need an open-ended question. Going back to what I said, most people come to work to do a good job. One of my favorite stories, kind of like what you're saying too, is you'll have people show up to work now. Of course, technology's everywhere, but we're supposed to be working. And are you? And you're on your phone all the time. And we've got projects that need to happen or kids that need care, whatever it is. And so I'll hear like, they're lazy. They're on the phone all the time. I know they're on Facebook or Instagram or, whatever, social media. And I'm like, so you saw it? You saw that's what they are? Well, no, but that's what they're doing. Story starts, right? And then all of a sudden, I'm like, have you asked them, hey, you okay? You seem distracted today. Because really what happened is they left their 8-year-old at home by themselves because they need that job and paycheck so bad. They're worried that they shouldn't have done that, but they called in one more time and they lose their job.
Mm,
And then all of a sudden, it's like, well, I didn't think about that. Right. Because we automatically go to the assumptions, like you're saying, that are negative and then affect the relationship.
mm,
And what the reality of that is that I wish we talked about more is the relationship affects whoever your customer is. And that doesn't matter if it's healthcare or whatever industry it is. The relationship of the people inside your industry and your company affect your ability to be successful for the customer. And so we need to work on that more, right? We need to talk about assumptions more and they can be positive, but it takes a mental switch in your mind to say that can't be the whole story. I need to understand it. There has to be more to it because I hired them, right? I hired them. We hired them. So let's figure out what the real story is and make sure that we're trying to come from a place of positive intent, assuming positive intent before you let your mind go there. But it actually takes, in my mind, a mental switch to do that.
yeah. If you're going to make an assumption, you might as well assume the best.
So positive, right? And then the way you go into the conversation also changes, right? The way you go into the conversation, the way your body language is, you're not automatically teed off before you start, which they can feel, and then it doesn't go well for anybody. And you're ruminating about it, they're ruminating about it. And it's like we could have changed that whole thing by just switching in our mind that we're going to go in to try to get the whole story.
Mhm. There's a memory that's coming back to me of I had hired a new event coordinator at one point, and it was her first event, and she was really struggling, and all of a sudden, like, culturally, felt very out of alignment with the rest of our team, and everyone's coming to me, "Hey, this person's doing this person's doing this," and my, like, gut instinct is to get frustrated and, go into like, heat of what I was experiencing and bring that in the conversation, and I remember, like, taking a step back, or, like, what else is here? And I just, like, really came from a place of deep care, and like you said, I hired this person for a reason. There is something there about this person that I saw as a sparkle, and, like, I know this person's gonna be amazing, and when I sat down with her and I really was like, "Look, you're not in trouble. I just wanna understand
Mhm.
and really see what's going on here, because how I'm seeing you show up is very different than how I've seen you on meetings when we're not actually at the event."
Right.
And she just started crying and telling me, like, at her old companies, this had happened and this had happened, and she was having all this trauma response come up. And I've experienced this myself, and I know what that is like. And just having some grace and understanding from your team goes such a huge way. And from that point of that conversation, there was no performance improvement plan that I had to give her. There was no, like, verbal spanking I had to give. It was, let me understand what's really happening here. And then she shifted from there because she just knew I'm in a safe place with people who care. And so I would love
We
to,
immediately establish trust with her, which changes the whole dynamic.
there's a lot of trust that gets built.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so for you with, and I imagine in the workplace that you're in, there's so much, just emotional hardship that your team is seeing every day, and that can wear on you, and then you've got your own problems in your own life. And so when your team goes in, or when you go into these conversations and people are struggling, outside of just a conversation, what do you do to ensure that people are supported and given the resources that they need to do the best that they can?
I love that question because I think there's a multitude of things there that have to be considered no matter where you work. So again, you mentioned the first thing is the conversation, but the second thing is the constant contact, right? So you have one conversation, they tell you what's going on, and then nobody checks in again. And that doesn't help them change, grow, whatever it is, support throughout the next step. So I think it's important that there is I say constant, but it depends on what that means to the person. You've had the initial conversation and you've established a mechanism to continue to support them both verbally, mentally, physically, whatever that is. And that's going to depend on what their needs are. So it starts with that first conversation, and then the conversation has to continue. And that's, I think, the key piece is making sure that you have, whether it's scheduled or periodic touch points to see how things are going based on what they said. And that takes intentional planning on your part and time spent.
Yeah.
I want to go back to something you said just around, you hired them like you and I both agreed to. I really believe that 50% of people's success, at least in the first year or two, you own. And I think we forget that, right? You hire them, you're like, okay, well, I hired them. I'm going to give them these tools, but now it's on them to perform. Not really. It's on both of you. It's on them to perform, but it's on you to provide an environment where they can perform because you hired them. Right. And so making sure that you own that together then gets you to the step you're talking about, making sure that you understand where are they coming from? What are the struggles they have if you see them not showing up, like the girl you said in the beginning. I also think that we're gonna be forced as companies, and we've done a decent job of this here, trying to figure out what wellness in the workplace means. And how do you support that? Because people come to work, do hard things at work, but come from all of these complex backgrounds, if you will. And so some of that is going to get brought into the environment. And of course, there's complexity theory and all of that that we could talk about forever. But we have decided to establish a center for well being. And it sounds like, oh, yeah, I mean, what's that mean? But it really has been extremely beneficial. They are a non judgmental party. It's made up of a multitude of different disciplines for us that we've decided to invest in that. And it gives our staff an out to have somebody else to go talk to who they don't work for or work with. right? And it's here on campus. It's been a great investment for us in regards to turnover, having sustainability of people being able to do really hard things here. I mean, we take care of kids that aren't going to make it. We take care of families who aren't great to their kids. So how do we do that and support staff that are, to your point, doing hard things? And that can be from sessions that they can have individually. We offer group type of, I say therapy, but it's more of a session around, hey, let's talk about what went well, what didn't go well today with a facilitator who's not your boss or somebody who works on your unit. And none of that goes back to them. It's a space that you can express yourself, how you're feeling, get support from people who actually are in the industry and in what you're in. We all go home, and I don't know about you, but I mean, my family's great. The reality is they do not understand what I do every day, and I shouldn't expect them to. And so their ability to support me on a difficult day, if we've had deaths we didn't want or things that have happened at work that aren't great, is different than what I can get from our group that we put together as a wellness division to support a multitude of different staff. And that's important for us.
I have multiple things that I could say on
Yeah.
this topic. One thing I'll say is the COO alliance that Cameron put together, I mean, is a great example of that because, like I told you, I was a salesperson. I did not think I would ever end up in a COO position. And then when I did, I was like, what the hell do I do? Like, I have no one to ask questions to. I didn't have anyone around me that had been in that role. And
Because there's one of you usually, right? There's one.
he was one of me. And, especially when I'm struggling, I can go to the owner of the company. And I had an amazing relationship with him. And talking about one of the core companies that I was with when I first became COO, had an amazing relationship with him. And there are some things that, like, you just can't bring to the owner of the company. Like, I'm struggling at it. Like, if I it's like it's in a relationship. If you're in a relationship and all of a sudden you're not feeling attracted to your partner, the moment you tell your partner, "Hey, I'm not really attracted to you anymore," you have opened up
Uh,
a million floodgates, and you may not be able to come back from it.
they're going to the negative, right? So to get
Exactly.
back from the negative is rough.
It's rough, and so there's a need for COOs or just really anybody who is in a role that's unique or I mean, you could be in a role that everybody's in the same role and you still want to have outside perspective or someone like you said who's in that position but not connected to your team that is just a safe space to go to. And so for anyone that's listening that's a COO and you're listening to this podcast because you're trying to find other information, connect with other people, and you're not in the CO Alliance, I highly recommend it. Shameless plug here. It is so incredible to be surrounded by people who get it and know what you're going through. And the second thing that I wanted to tag off of that is my curiosity around how you were able to measure the success of that initiative, because I imagine that that's a very expensive, you know, thing to roll out where you're paying for people's wellness and therapy in a sense. And I've tried bringing this to companies before where I was like, I have team members coming to me asking me questions that I do not feel like I'm
Mhm.
qualified or nor is my job to really support them in. But what do I do? They don't have the money or the resources to go hire a therapist. And trying to get leadership to move forward with initiatives like that when P&L might already be tight, and it's how do you track that that's actually gonna give an ROI? Were you guys able to measure any of the results from that?
Yeah. So, yes, I would tell you that we do, and it depends too. I've got a really supportive executive team. Let me say that, but it depends too on how you define an ROI, right? So for me, I'm looking at, do they feel supported? Do they stay? Intent to stay, and some things like that. So specifically, we measure intent to stay. We measure how many people have used their services. Then we have and this is done, of course, via survey. We have a safety survey that talks about how many people have used our wellness group, but we also have what we call pulse surveys. They go out to a third of our company every quarter, and we talk about, have you used the services? Did you feel like they helped you? Was it worth it? And we collect data like that. Seems like it's a little bit soft data, but then when you go and ask questions around intent to stay, usage of the program, and then look specifically at what pieces of the program they utilized. and asking them directly, did that affect your intent to stay? Yes or no? It's a pretty good measurement, right? And so then we, of course, take that and look at turnover percentages and what it costs to replace an employee, and you can establish financials around that. But we have found that it has been extremely helpful. We all are in an environment now where mental and behavioral health and that type of thing is a huge topic no matter what industry you're in. And so trying to help employees and staff show up in a positive way, especially if you're in a service oriented industry, while managing some of those more mental or behavioral health type of complexities is important. That's also something this team does. Specifically, I will say healthcare is really looking at, not to be a downer, but our suicide rates in clinicians, right? And so, to your point, when we look at how many times have they taken a call from somebody that wasn't feeling great or had suicidal thoughts, and we could get them to our therapist or get them to somebody who can actually give them direct help, that's a big ROI for us.
I could totally see that being huge.
It is.
Mhm.
To do something real quick though, when you commented on the other COOs, I really do wanna say this is an amazing opportunity, what you guys do here. The ability to interact with other COOs across the nation and really globally wherever that do other things, that's what I crave as a COO. Is I love talking to CEOs in healthcare, but I really wanna talk to ones that are in other industries and companies and figure out what are you doing, because it absolutely is applicable to my industry. I just need to have the convo. And there's not a lot of platforms that you can do that, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, if you wanna talk about it afterwards,
Yeah,
I'm
love
happy
to.
to talk about it. Yeah, it was amazing for me. I did 2 years, I did 2 events, and yeah, just absolutely amazing. I'm still really good friends with people and the support. I mean, there was one thing in the first month that I learned with group interviews. I don't know if you guys do group interviews when you're hiring, but
Yeah,
yeah, I had never heard of this concept and Cameron taught it. That one video completely changed because I ran a recruiting company, completely changed the way that we did recruiting internally and then taught our clients, and literally like 5,000 plus people have now been placed as a result of being able to really change, it was the monumental shift for us, like, learning that one thing, and I learned that from another COO who
yeah,
made a bunch of had to try a bunch of different things that I didn't have to try, and I just got to take away the gold nugget, but, yeah, thanks for saying that, and
yeah,
I'd love to kind of shift a little bit to talking about you specifically because we're talking a lot about supporting team and how to take care of the people under us. But as being in the position that you're in, and you're telling me that you've got your own, you got your own family and kiddos and other responsibilities, but you've got a lot on your plate. How do you take care of yourself, stay grounded in times like you were telling me about what happened a couple years ago,
yeah,
really crisis situations? What do you do to make sure that you're showing up to work grounded and with a full cup to pour back into your team?
yeah. Um, First of all, and everybody's gonna say, "Yeah, I know, sleep is underrated." You know? So, we really need to do a better job of taking care of ourselves, and we all know it, but intentionally, I make a pretty hard effort to, read before I go to bed and to try to be in bed at a decent time. It sounds like, "Oh, yeah, everybody says it." We don't do it very often, though, and I can tell you, I can feel myself start to respond differently, be a little bit more edgy, a little bit more fussy, when I don't make sure that I've intentionally planned that out. The other thing that I think is important, and I think all of us would tell you, we have vacation we never take. I've got to get better about that. In fact, I just had a conversation this morning about I've got to go through and look at taking time off to rejuvenate myself, because the constant need to make a decision as a CEO, no matter what company you're in, they're flying constantly. So even when you're not here, you're making decisions and you're getting phone calls or you're thinking about strategy, like that never turns off. And so I really am trying to get better and have found myself that when I schedule time and people were like, well, could you do this? I used to say yes. Yeah, yeah, I'll just shorten it by a day. I'm really trying to set harder boundaries. And that's hard for all of us to do. But when I do that, I really do show up better. I show up better at work. And so that's important to me to do that as well. And then, girl, anything around spending time with friends and exercise, of course, just for me is walking, got my weighted vest, doing the thing, giving my head time to think and giving myself time to breathe is important in making sure I show up. The hardest part of that is saying no. And there are times that I'm not good at it. I do think in these jobs, if you have somebody that can support you, helping you say no, that's key. So, for instance, for me, I have some administrative support that will come in and be like, hey, they needed you to do this, this, and this. I told them no on the final two. And it takes that away from you feel like, oh God, like I really want to do it. And so he and I have aligned on what feeds my cup, what are the priorities for my role, what are the priorities for my team. And if it doesn't fit into that, um, I need to be able to say no. And I don't think we're good at it.
Mm, I totally agree. My roommate in my house that I just moved into, we actually created core values
Yes.
for our home, and he actually, had a company that it's called Wellness Daddy. He just hit 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, and he had a sleep course, so I just wanna, like, double click on sleep and
Yes.
mold and Lyme disease,
Uh,
for, like, 4 or 5 years. I was very, very, very sick, and sleep is 100% the biggest thing that I could say. If there's one thing that you focus on if you're struggling with anything, it's, like, your diet and sleep.
yep.
Um, but anyways, back to our core values. One of our core values is around being energy rich, and
Yes.
the things that creates richness in your energy is by getting rid of the gray. You are sucked dry of energy when you are saying yes to things that in your body you're coming from a place like, I feel like I should do this, or like, I don't want them to think of me that I don't care. And it's all this like, we're shitting all over ourselves.
But you're doing it. Like nobody else is doing that to you. Like nobody else is doing that. And you're like, oh God. And you're like, there's nothing.
And people respect when someone says no or yes. They trust your yeses and your nos more deeply because they know that you're only saying yes if you really want to be there.
Yeah.
So I would love to just kind of close this out because I know we've got a few minutes left here. I'd like to ask people, what is the thing that you're most excited about? And this is perfect timing because we're just going into June. The next half of the year, what are you most excited about, both personally and professionally?
Right. So I'm most excited professionally about where we're going to be able to take healthcare and children's mercy. There's a piece of it that's scary around AI, but there's a piece of it that is absolutely phenomenally going to be helpful. And I think our industry specifically, it's going to be like who can get it, the right one, right? Like the right platform. How are you using it to help patients and families? But how are you using it to help everything we've talked about today? How are you putting it in to help you operationally, but how are you also putting it in to help you strategically manage companies? And I think there's all of these things that are coming out, and us trying to watch, what's the A product versus where the development is on the other products, and trying to figure that out is uber exciting. And to be part of that at this point in healthcare, I think is going to be absolutely transformative for what we can do and how we do it for people. And that's extremely exciting. Personally, I'm excited. I've got a kiddo in college, one that's a junior in high school. I am very excited that I'm getting them to a place of adulthood and maybe I've done my job right and continue to interact with them in a way that parenting, but now we can do fun things too and finding that balance. Personally, I really make sure that I'm trying to engage with them in a different way now that they're older, and I love that they want to spend time with me. Again, sounds kind of trite and silly, but there's a lot of people that don't want to be with their parents, and that my kids still do. I think is a win. So that their friends all come and we'll take them wherever and do the thing is exciting. But personally too, getting to that stage of my life where I can help other people be better in the industry, and over my the I'm in the last half, really part of my career, and being able to hand off to the next person who should be better. And if I've done my job, they'll be better than I am. I always tell somebody that there's somebody who's prettier, faster, and makes more money, and I'll die chasing her. And so, right? And so that's what I'm excited about. Like, I'm gonna get it going, and when I hand off and give the baton, I hope that person's ahead.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yep.
Well, this has been absolutely amazing. One of my favorite episodes so far. So thank you so, so, so much for your time. Really
Okay,
appreciate it.
God, thanks for having me. It's been great.
Absolutely. Best wishes.
You too. Bye.